All right. Hey, everyone. I hope that folks are doing as well as can be given the current circumstances and that your families are all safe and managing all right. In the spirit of sharing resources, I thought I would make just a brief video introducing folks who may not have seen it before to Microsoft OneNote, which is a software that I use pretty frequently to teach from, and that is one of many, many good ways to teach online. I know that one thing I'm thinking a lot about is how to sort of make myself learn the fewest amount of new tricks possible. So this might not be something that is useful to even anybody, and that would be very understandable if you're trying to keep things within, as I am, keep things within a familiar realm. But I was hoping this might be useful to a couple folks out there, and if not, that's okay too. So with all that said, I'm going to start just by sharing my screen with you on this Zoom recording by coming to the Zoom interface at the bottom center and clicking share and then share screen. So you should stop seeing my face and start seeing just a screen cap of what I'm doing here. So the first page up here is I just wanted to make a note on the hardware that I'm using. So I have a Microsoft Surface Pro. I know a lot of you all are Mac users, so maybe this is not going to be your thing. I will say that OneNote does have an iPad version, but I've not used it myself. From what I hear, it's a bit clunkier than the Microsoft tablet version of the software. But this is what I use. I think mine's a couple generations old, and I think when I bought this, it was like $600 for everything you needed. So for the tablet and a little keyboard that goes along with it, and a pen that's used to write on it. So that's just a quick note on hardware. So let's get into OneNote. Okay. So this is what the basic interface looks like. And so if you come all the way over here on the left-hand side, there are a few toggle buttons, the top of which is your notebook selector. So I'm down here in EGR 270 Mechanics, and I appear to have selected Homework 6 Solutions. So the first thing I'll do, and the first thing I typically do if I'm going to be starting a new lecture notes or something like that, is just come down here and add a blank page. And then I'll collapse this all so I have the whole screen to write on. So we'll call this like OneNote demo. All right. And then the other thing I like to do is I like everything to look like graph paper. So I'll come to view and then rule lines, and I'll select a graph paper grid, just like that. All right, so at that point, I can write on this. I'm tilting the screen back so it's flat on my table. I actually could minimize my head here. And I can just write on the screen using the pen. So, hey everyone, welcome to the apocalypse. Okay. Oh wow, I spelled everyone wrong too. It's really tempting to like go back and re-record that and like get rid of that little mistake, but that's one of the no-nos of taking screen captured videos, is you can't be too picky about things or you'll drive yourself kind of nuts. So I'll let that lie. Yeah, so if you look along, so I'm in the draw tab now, and I'm writing with my pen that goes with it. There are a lot of different options for that, but you'll note that there's a selection of different kind of colors and things to write with up there, including apparently rainbow sparklies. So I use that quite a bit, and then as I'm sort of building my lecture notes, I often frequently use these different shapes, so I can throw in a set of axes, and also the ruler if I'm drawing something by hand and I want to get a really straight line for something, or I want to get parallel lines for something. I tend to use that. Okay. The other thing that I tend to do quite a bit is insert images into my lecture notes. So that's pretty easy to do. So here I just have pulled up a folder and I have some image that I want to insert, and I'm just going to click and drag it in. And then I'm using my mouse pad right now to sort of place this where I want it to be. So say I wanted that to be there. Maybe I want to delete this swirl and so forth. Okay, so I can either click and drag. I can also do that through the insert button, and there are a lot of options here. So I have often used this to stick in a link for an online video, some kind of website. I can use the equation math tools here if you don't know the keyboard shortcuts offhand, which it's totally worth learning the keyboard shortcuts if you're going to use this frequently, but I could insert some equation if I wanted to. And the other thing that might be really useful is you can do this insert printout thing. That is useful if you want to insert like some kind of worksheet. Anything that is in PDF form can be inserted into OneNote. So maybe you wanted to insert like a slide deck and be able to write on your slide deck. That's kind of one way of doing that. Or just some kind of worksheet where you're kind of going through it and writing right on top of it. So once you insert something like that, you can just write on top of it. So while I'm talking, if I were sort of talking over this with students, maybe I want to point to what's happening here at joint A on the left-hand side of this truss, and I could say, here's point A on the left-hand side, and kind of point to it like this, and students could see that. Okay, so the last thing I'll just mention is that my general kind of workflow when I'm designing a new lecture is first to make my instructor notes. And so that's when I'm kind of stepping through. This is what I would use just as my personal notes when I'm teaching a new class. And I would write kind of everything out that I would want students to be able to get out of a lecture period. The second thing is I then go and copy and paste. So I can come over to my notebook section and right click on whatever I'm currently working on that I'd like to make a copy of. And I can make a copy of it. That would appear below. And I make essentially a redacted version of my instructor notes for students to follow along with. And so I'm doing this in class presently, but could transfer to being online really easily if students have access to a printer and would want this. So I've asked students about what those resources might be. But in that case, in general, for big blocks of text, because I don't want people necessarily writing out a lot of text, I'll write that in advance. It looks like this class was like 6 months ago or something like that. So it looks like this all sort of preamble or this beginning section was review from the prior class. And then as I'm going on through the lecture, I'll have students go through and fill in with me, certain things along the way. So maybe I was going to draw, I think I was going to draw in an exploded view here, but anyways, I think you get the point. So yeah, so students can access this and print it out with me, and then I make a third version that is just the lecture as I'm kind of going along with things. So you'll note that in this instance, I've done it in different colors so that the black text is what students start with in their kind of notes shell, what I start with in my notes shell, and I'm sort of talking through different things, and then I can ad lib a little bit more, give examples, and people are hopefully listening to that instead of just writing constantly. Heavy emphasis on drawing diagrams, and you'll see, yeah, some of that. Okay, nice. All right, I think that's all for today. So coming back to our Zoom, I hope that, yeah, I hope that everybody's doing well as can be. Feel free to ask questions if you have any about OneNote. I've been using it for a little while. I just kind of went through a few basics just now. But yeah, hopefully it's useful, and hope everyone's doing all right. Okay.